Hi, everyone.
Hi.
This is kind of fun to see. I've got the list of people joining. Every second, someone else is coming on board.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we'll give this a couple minutes, and a lot of people signed up for this, so.
Julie and Marlisa, I have found it very helpful to put organization names next to people's name, either underneath their picture and also in the chat. Just to get to know each other.
It's a great suggestion, Melinda. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll even spell out my name.
Tracy, your background is awesome.
Yes, well, you have to be careful. The bar up top is broken. And of course, how I realized that is when it came crashing down on my head one day. So I've been warning everyone that's been using it. It is mobile. We drag it, from office to office at times. So
that would make for an exciting webinar, for
sure. Yeah, safety risk webinar. But it seriously came down and hit me like around the head. I'm like, ouch. So I learned to not move it by myself. For safety reasons, it's a two-person move. Of course, then there's always, sometimes you want it and it's not where it last was, and you've got to go search for it. Sending emails out. Who's got the Goodwill backdrop? So is it still raining? Is it raining outside? Has anyone stepped outside in the last hour or so?
It's okay. It's dreary, not raining.
Dreary. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I was just thinking, I'm so glad I can do this here from my office. I don't have to get my car and drive to the country club or, wherever we would have had it. And so, there are pros to having to do this remotely for sure. Well, I'd say, what do we have here in terms of time? Oh, we'll give it another minute. People are still filing in.
Tracy, I don't know if you talked about it, but was the banner from the gala?
No, the banner we've had actually for some time. And Allison, hello. What you missed was the exciting moment when it came crashing down my head. Not that didn't happen just now. I'm saying that I've learned from experience that you need people to move this, that don't do it on your own.
Oh, poor Tracy.
But here I am. I survived it.
You did.
Right? Yeah. Could make for a good donor story, maybe. I don't know. Well, I think we're still waiting for some, but all of you have, been here on time. So I'm going to do the fun piece of sharing my screen.
And Tracy, before you do that, we have just a couple of housekeeping things, if that's okay.
Okay.
Plus, I want to tell everybody about the wonder of you, so I'll introduce you.
Oh, okay.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Jillian apologizes, our president apologizes. She has lost her voice. So I'm Marlisa Post with Goodwill of the Finger Lakes, and I am the VP of Marketing for AFPGV. And we have just a few announcements and housekeeping things. As many of you know, October is Ethics Awareness Month. AFP members are required to sign and uphold the AFP Code of Ethical Standards which outlines honest, transparent, and ethical fundraising. Demonstrate your commitment to ethics this month and beyond by using hashtag #ISignTheCode and hashtag Ethics Awareness Month to join the conversation on social media. To access free resources and tools, visit afpglobal.org/ethics. And we will put this links in the chat. And as the original ethical Ethel from our newsletter, I can't speak highly enough of all this. We also understand that many of our current and prospective members and their organizations face a great deal of uncertainty as a result of this pandemic. In response to the current conditions, we are pleased to announce 6 scholarships for membership. Be sure to check our website, afpgv.org, to learn more about these and other scholarships, including the deadlines to apply. If you're interested in professional development opportunities within AFPGV, we are currently seeking members who are interested in joining volunteer committees and/or serving as a board member. To learn more or to nominate yourself or others, visit afpgv.org, click Contact Us, and then click Volunteer. Also, a reminder that our Be the Cause campaign, which benefits our chapter and the AFP Foundation of Philanthropy, is taking place now. Making a donation demonstrates your investment in the future of our profession and in advancing philanthropy for the greater good. Help us reach our goal by making a donation to afpgv.org. Thank you for your consideration. So during the program today, if you have questions for Tracy, just ask them in the chat, and at the end, we will have Tracy answer your burning questions. So today's speaker, Tracy Schleyer, is the Vice President of Community Engagement at Goodwill of the Finger Lakes. At Goodwill, Tracy oversees the fundraising for the organization's mission programs, the Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, ABVI, and 211 Lifeline, along with marketing, communications, and government relations. With a 35-year career in fundraising, Tracy's prior fundraising was as a Director of Development for the Seneca Park Zoo Society, Director of Annual Giving for Boston University, and an account executive at Epsilon Incorporated, where she raised funds for national nonprofit clients, National Multiple Sclerosis Society, Catholic Relief Services, and a National Engineering Honor Society. Her first professional fundraising job was managing the telefund operation at Alfred University. For both Goodwill of the Finger Lakes and the Seneca Park Zoo, Tracy led the fundraising for capital campaigns that positioned these organizations for the future of service to the community. Tracy has held many volunteer roles throughout her life. Since 1998, she has volunteered for the Association of Fundraising Professionals, Genesee Valley Chapter, including positions of board president. She also volunteers with the as a board member of Color Bright and Green, with AFP National Philanthropy Day Awards Chair, and Development Committee member for Rochester People's Climate Coalition. Tracy holds an MBA from Boston University and a Bachelor of Science degree in marketing from Alfred University. She is also a certified fundraising executive, and in 2011, she received the Association of Fundraising Professionals Genesee Valley Chapter Outstanding Fundraiser Award. So we're in good hands today to learn about the Ask, Before and After from Tracy Schleyer. So take it away, Tracy.
Okay, thanks, Marissa. All right, so as I said, I'm going to do my share screen here. I'm trying to get to the slideshow. There we go. You guys seeing my slide?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so I was asked to speak to this topic, the donor visit, the ask, before and after. So it's the before and after that we're going to address. And certainly I don't want to just sit here and talk to you for 45 minutes. So please feel free to put stuff in the chat or just speak up if you want. I really don't mind interruptions. The whole Zoom thing can feel a little bit awkward, but don't feel that you're rude if you're interrupting, okay? I thought that this was really a great idea to have me present on this topic. And we've all seen presentations and educational opportunities and making the ask, right? We all think, well, that's the important piece. But you know what? We got to think about the before and after. So that's what we'll address here. So I have here a Benjamin Franklin quote: "By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail." So how many of you have set an appointment with a donor? Maybe it's a lunch or meeting them at their home or office, and you get there and you have a fabulous conversation, but the ask never happens. You know, you thought about it in your mind, you thought how it was going to play out, but it just doesn't play out that way. So you know, it turned out to be a really good cultivation event. And pat yourself on the back for a good cultivation event. But you know what? You really had set this up to ask for a gift. So I know this has happened to me, and want to hear from you folks if you want to raise your hand or put in the chat if this has happened to you too, because I'm going to assume that I'm not the only one that this has happened to. So go ahead, put in your little messages on your chat if this happened to you, anything you want to share in terms of that type of experience. I know I'm not the only one out there that this has happened to. So, maybe the thought is that if you had planned better, then you could have executed the ask, right? No matter how wonderful you might be, your cause, your organization, it's just really important to prepare. You could be the best solicitor in the world, but you got to prepare for it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, 80-20 rule. So us fundraisers, when we think of the 80-20 rule, or over more recent years, we think of the 90-10 rule, 80% of our funds raised coming from 20% of our donors. That's not what I'm talking about here. Today I'm talking about the amount of work that goes into your ask and the preparation of having 80% of it really being the before part, and getting folks, us fundraisers, to really put our time into before we have that meeting with the donor. So we have to think about the decisions that need to be made before we get into the ask. Who's going to make the call? Who's going to be at the table? Who's going to actually come out and ask for this gift? How much money are we requesting? Is it a one-time gift? Is it a multi-year pledge over time? Is there donor recognition tied to it? So think about these things ahead of time, because you don't want to get there and then figure it all out, right? So we're going to go through some of this: the who, what, why, and where. So we'll start with these, really important pieces. So the who. All right. Most of the time, when we're talking about a major gift solicitation, it's not going to be just you, who's going to be at the table? Is it you and a board member? Is it you and someone else that works on this project? Is it another staff person, maybe someone intimately involved in the program that you're raising money for, the project? So figure out the who, and then also who's going to actually make the ask when the time comes. These are really critical questions you need to think about beforehand. You want to make sure that all those who's are going to know, what their role is, who's going to make the introductions. Decide that ahead of time. Who's going to transition the group from small talk to the business at hand? If you have program staff that will be attending, how comfortable are they, being in front of a donor and having these types of conversations? You want to really, address that and make that individual or individuals feel comfortable. And what is it that you want them to highlight and how? So make sure that you are clear as to who has what role, and think about that and make sure everyone's on the same page with that. Okay, what? What is the content of the meeting? So really, what are you there for? Okay, you're there to ask for money, but make sure that everyone that's there at the table is on the same page. And my slide here says, but before we move on, allow me to belabor the point even further. So think about the what. You don't want to bore your prospect, your donor. Think about making it concise and meaningful. What is it that the donor, the prospective donor, is going to want to hear from you? What questions might you anticipate? Okay, so it's important to review this in advance so that you're not just talking to that individual, or maybe it's a couple, or maybe it's a group, but just think about what content is going to be. The why. Okay, you think it's simple. Why are we here? Why are we asking for this gift? But again, this is the prep. Really think this through. It might be obvious to you, but what about to all the other people that you might be engaging? If you've got your CEO coming, if you've got, as I said, another volunteer or a staff person, make sure that they understand, the why. And it never hurts to, you don't want to assume, establish your baseline there with everyone. And the why, make sure that you're really thinking about your prospect's perspective, because your donors will be thinking, why me? Why am I here? Why did you ask me to meet with me? Hopefully they know that you're going to be asking them for a gift. But why now? And, think about ahead of time. Well, as I said, what is it that they're going to be thinking about? All right, the where. So I have here a photo of a diner, and I would say in most cases, this is not the where you want to be, but not in all cases. So, think about where that ask is going to be made. This diner example here that I have actually not just one, but I've got a couple of donors that over the years, this is where they like to meet with me. Not this particular diner, this is just a photo I got off of the internet, but it gives you the feel of, that type of restaurant situation. It's not my ideal place to sit and ask someone for a contribution, but you know what? It's where the donor wants to meet, because it's the donor's favorite diner, right? It's where the donor feels comfortable. And so you got to think about that. Where is the donor going to feel comfortable? For me, when it's my hands as to, where I'd like to meet a donor, their home, their office, again, it's all about where is the donor going to feel most comfortable. If it's a restaurant, I put a lot of thought into, I'm going to be able to have a conversation and not have to yell at each other. We've all probably been there, where we sit down in a restaurant and we're trying to engage in conversation with a donor. Maybe the music's too loud, maybe there's just too much chatter going on. Those are not really good places to be able to have a heartfelt conversation and make an ask. So really think about the where. So let's see. Yeah, so just make sure you're comfortable and your donors comfortable. All right. Think about your collateral materials that you might be bringing with you. So you might want to, do some research ahead of time. What is it that the donor is going to want to see? Will you need a pledge form? Will you need recognition information during this ask? A brochure, a newsletter? Do you have visuals that you want to present? Maybe a gift chart. All sorts of things might be necessary or you want to bring to the ask. So think about that ahead of time. Remember that these collateral pieces should be supplementing all meeting. They shouldn't be driving the meeting. In fact, sometimes you don't want them to be doing the heavy lifting for you. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll bring the material and I'll decide not to give it to that individual and decide that it's better if I send it to them after the meeting as a touch point for afterwards or a reason for me to reach out after. So, you can judge that on the spot. Okay. So I've been chatting for a number of minutes here. I'm going to take a pause because I want to hear from you about that whole preparation. Again, you can put it in the chat, or if someone wants to unmute themselves and share some things that you might do before in preparation to get ready for that meeting. Let's hear from you. So I'm going to wait.
Hi, Tracy. This is Melinda. So I have a friend who taught me a great tip, and she would script out everything that everybody was going to say in a meeting. So, for example, and she was the development professional, and she would say to the executive director, okay, I'm going to introduce you, and then you were going to say, and she had bullet pointed it all out in a script like a play. And that was did a dress rehearsal.
Yep.
And that was very helpful, putting it down on paper.
Yeah. I think especially for if you've got someone who has never done this before, sometimes when you're in a campaign, you may have individuals where you've done this, so many times, and it's kind of rote, for folks. Just make sure that you're not memorizing and that it doesn't come across as scripted. Of course, you want this to feel like a natural conversation about your project, about your program. So I think that's a good suggestion to script things out. But my warning is just make sure that it doesn't come across in the meeting as being scripted. So let's see. I'm looking at Allison's comment about restaurant of choice. Yeah. So this, lesson learned. Yeah, you'll learn. And the thing is that all the preparation in the world isn't going to cover everything. Okay. I think about the ask that I made, and I shared this in other presentations where was the CEO, our board chair, and myself, and we're sitting down with a couple, and this is when I worked at the Seneca Park Zoo, and we had it all planned out. We had been down this before. It was actually $1 million ask we were making, and we asked for this couple to support the Japanese lemur monkeys. Well, did I know that the husband had, fought in the war and had negative feelings about Japan I didn't know that, you know, and all the preparation I could have done didn't prepare me for that. And you're in the ask, and he just has come out with that. We will not support anything that has to do with Japan, even these monkeys, right? But preparation is just really, really important. So, anyone else before I move on? Okay. Here are some things that you might want to think about beforehand. Are you meeting with someone who has philanthropic intent? Do you know that ahead of time? You might not. And it would be kind of good to know that if you can. What are the donors' expectations? You have a power question prepared. A power question is something that is going to be meaningful, that could get some conversation going. Power question, an example would be, so what was the best thing that's ever happened to you in your life in terms of your philanthropy? Okay, it's a powerful question, and see how the donor reacts and the conversation goes. So that will allow you to get some insight into your donor, but maybe you want to think about those power questions ahead of time, is my point here. Okay, so write down your questions that you thought ahead of time. You don't want to write them down and bring them to the meeting. Okay, the writing down is just an exercise, just your preparation. You want to bring a video brochure. We already mentioned that. Actually, I mentioned the brochure, but I didn't mention the video. Okay, if you're going to show a video, if you're going to do it on your laptop, on your iPad, just rehearse that. Make sure that it's actually going to work, okay? Are you depending on Wi-Fi of a restaurant to show this, or Wi-Fi of an office? You can download onto your laptop or whatever it is you're bringing, probably a better thing to do. And is there something that you need to send to the donor ahead of time? Something else to consider. That's really rare for me, but maybe it is what you need to think about. Think about asking for advice. We all probably know that this is, as a fundraiser, really good thing to do to engage your prospects. So be prepared if you're going to ask for advice. Be prepared for their input or their impressions. You really just want to make sure that your donor's feeling valued and important. Okay, so research your donor. Thanks to the internet, we have more access to information about our donors than ever. Go on to Facebook, see if you can, find their Facebook page, LinkedIn, just Google the name of the donor, and most of the time you're going to come up with something these days to learn more about them. But think of these questions. What is it they care about? Is there someone that knows them that might be able to share information? What other causes are they part of? Certainly know their giving history with your organization. Absolutely, make sure you review that right before the meeting. And think about, this is an important one, think about what objections, fears, concerns that they might have about contributing to your program or your project. This is a very important thing to think about ahead of time. Okay, back to Melinda's piece about scripting things out and practicing. Just make sure you've practiced. A photo here of someone golfing, and if you golf, you know that the more you practice, the better you become. And the same with preparing for your donor ask. So just practice, practice, practice. And you want to just make sure that you are very familiar with your product and your pitch is conversational. You don't want to sound like you're reciting lines because your owner's going to see through that, and they'll feel like you're trying to sell them something. And you absolutely want it to feel conversational. So practice is really going to be important when you've got a group of people, when it's just not you involved in the ask. So your job is to kind of choreograph, the choreographer, and let everyone know, as I've already mentioned, what role are they going to play in this meeting, and practice different scenarios of how you think that the conversation might go. Your goal is really going to be, your donor wants to feel understood, but to get there, you yourself, you have to know what you're talking about. You don't want to bore them. You want them to feel comfortable. So how are you going to do that? Well, you might just want to practice this out loud. All right. Practice in front of a mirror if you need to. These days with technology, you can even, like right now, we're recording this session. You could be doing your own Zoom call and record that way and go back and watch yourself. So, and as I keep saying, practice with the others that are going to be in the ask with you. All right. So I've talked a lot about the before. So now we want to get into the after. And so much of this is, of course, not rocket science, and yet it can be helpful to think about all of this stuff, the before and the after, so that you're prepared. So you've made the ask, you're done, you pulled it off. Now what? Well, one thing that's important is you really want to debrief with others that have been involved. So take the time to check in with the others that participated and debrief on how it went and maybe what next steps are. If there are others and you were it, debrief yourself, write notes, write your contact report, and realize what your next actions are. All right. You are undoubtedly going to have some follow-up. So what is that? Did you tell the donor that you're going to get back to them on something? I don't always have all of the answers to the questions that the donor may ask. And so I find myself quite frequently saying, let me get back to you on that. Or maybe there's a piece of the conversation that after the fact I thought, you know what, I should have made this point. And I don't hesitate to, at times, pick up the phone and say, hey, we were talking about this, and afterwards I had this thought and just wanted to share that with you. The follow-up is really important. Don't just let all that planning and ask happen and not do any follow-up. Maybe your follow-up is also a thank you note, handwritten, maybe it's an email, whatever you think that the donor's preferred communication style is. I personally feel that with older adults, they appreciate the handwritten note a lot more, but each individual is different. And then I have the bullet, have someone else follow up. So maybe it was you and someone else, and you want the B team, or maybe the A team, to come in after the fact and pick up the phone and call that donor and say, hey, I know that you just met with Tracy. Thanks for taking the time. and wanted to see if you had any questions for me. You know, maybe that's your CEO doing that, or maybe it's the program person. But think about if there's someone else that you can involve after the ask to help you with the follow-up. So let me hear from you. Anyone have some follow-up suggestions they want to share?
Tracy,
I'm going to wait.
Oh, sorry.
Wait until I hear from someone.
So Tracy, my question is, you talked about the example with the gentleman who was a veteran of World War II and kind of having to make that pivot. When you go through all this kind of planning and scripting and practicing, what do you do when you kind of have to turn on a dime like that to not let the donor know that they've just completely, kind of bulldozed you? I mean, what's the best thing to do, even with all that preparation?
I'd say my two most important words is I understand. Seriously, I understand, and explain why you understand. And geez, I hadn't thought about that. Or gosh, that, even if it's someone kind of derailing me, like that example, it could be that they asked a question, like I said, that I don't know the answer to. And so just to be honest and say, I'm going to get back to you on that. I think I might know a little bit, and here's what I can respond to, but you deserve more than that, so I'm going to follow up with you. So, honesty, putting yourself in their shoes. That's how you want to approach it. Okay, so Stephanie's saying if you meet off-site, invite them for a visit to see your nonprofit in action. Absolutely. Tom saying I'm sorry works well too. Yeah, absolutely. The getting folks to your organization, if you have an organization where you can bring folks to see firsthand what takes place, not everyone does, but if you do and you can get them to your location, for me personally, of every place I've worked, it's always ideal. And that is just the best way to engage people, to get them to really understand what it is that you do and what you're asking for. Okay. So, just a note here that, really you want your donor to feel really good about the decision that they're making and the investment that they're making. So that's the thought, before and after. How can you make them feel that this is so important to your organization and that they are important also? Okay. And then finally, I'm just closing with prepare, practice, promote, and let the passion of how you feel about your organization, this project, this program, let it shine. Remember that most of your preparation, most of the work that's being done for this ask is going to happen ahead of time. So really, prepare and practice. There's no substitute for preparing. That preparation is going to give you confidence too. That's really important. I know I've been in situations where I haven't prepared appropriately and I've regretted it so much. We all have so much on our plates, right? Especially now. But you have to find that time to prepare and practice. Fortunately, I have an office that I can close the door and I can talk to myself and I can do that. So it's so very valuable, and it's going to help you to have that successful ask, and the same with the after the ask. So This is my PowerPoint presentation. Now you get to see me again, and I get to see you folks again. So like I said, this is not rocket science, but it's good to have these reminders, right? You know, you may be thinking, yeah, okay, none of this is really new, but you need the reminder sometimes. What reminders might you have? Anyone? What other ideas, other thoughts on preparing, what you need to do ahead of time, what you need to do afterwards? I know you guys have other things other than what I've told you.
Tracy, I have a question for the group as well of just, does anyone have a sophisticated process using your CRM that, you know, kind of tracks your steps or unifies your whole team's steps? I think some of the bigger higher ed orgs might have that, or hospitals. But I know that was something that we always looked at was, especially when you're working with a team and everyone has their own different styles, just like any suggestions on how to like uniform your approach with your team, or if anyone has any tips or tricks on that end, or your organization has experimented with anything of that nature. So maybe it's your own internal checklist. I don't know.
You know, each organization is going to do it differently, but it is really important to document, right? And so we all have databases, and you know, doing that after the ask contact report and making notes of what took place, what your next actions are, is really critically important, because this is not the only prospect you're going to sit down and solicit with all year, right? There's going to be many, and you can't keep track of all of it, and neither can anyone else. So document that, put it on your database, and yeah, figure out how it is that you're going to make sure that, you know, if you don't have sophisticated software, which I believe most do not have, most organizations do not have, you know, a database or software that will do your moves management. You got to figure out your own internal system to that and make sure everyone's tuned into it. How about others? Oh, but I do want to say, Emily, is there something behind you moving?
My dog is just taking a nap. It is no reflection on your presentation, Tracy. He naps frequently.
Well, I only see you in this tiny little box. Movement, and I didn't know if it was a giant rodent or a dog. I could.
He like nestles in my guest bedroom pillows, and this is what I've learned what he does all day. So, no rats.
Good. Yeah, because we were in the Dixon Schwab, well, not to say anything negative about the Dixon Schwabel studios, but we were in their studio the other day. Marlisa's laughing, and yeah, a little mouse just ran across, and it was exciting.
The worst part was it was during our fundraiser and the mouse did not donate. So that was just rude.
Yeah, yeah, it's not too late. You can still go after that mouse, Marlisa. Okay, I'm gonna, while you guys are thinking of questions you might want to add or comments to make to share with others, because you know we really do want this to be sharing, not just, you know, me talking at you. You know, this is a platform for us to educate each other, share what works, what doesn't work. I'm gonna switch gears for a moment and talk about something very unrelated to this topic, which is our online fundraiser that we had. That's why I just mentioned Dixon Schwabel. They were the ones who we hired to perform this production for us, and it was wonderful. They did a great job. We're really pleased with the execution and the end product of this online fundraiser. And really, I want to just point out Marlisa Post is the one who really made this all happen and worked with Schwabel, and Marlisa did a fabulous job. So if you all want to see a really well done online fundraiser, I'm sure you can reach out to Marlisa, and she can, you know, share the link, and you can ask her words of wisdom on our very positive experience.
Tracy, can I ask you a question about that?
Mm-hmm.
Realizing that we are totally off topic, but you and I have been talking about it, and I wanted to know, since I had tuned in for part of the gala to see how you did it, was it significantly more effort to move it online or significantly less effort than doing it in person? How did that pan out for you?
Mm-hmm. From my perspective, it was about the same amount of effort, but Lisa's the one that can answer that question best.
So I would say to you, in a lot of ways, less effort, especially the day of, because there's a lot fewer moving pieces. You're not worrying about guest check-ins. You're not worrying about the catering. You're not worrying about setting up and tearing down. So that piece was certainly a lot less effort. There's a definite learning curve, even if it's online event software you've used before, because this is very different. So that part, you know, maybe took a bit more effort, but overall, definitely a little bit easier.
And I would think, you know, our next event is supposed to be in March. You know, it's supposed to be at Hyatt. But you know, each day as we get closer to that day, we're questioning, are we going to have another online event? And certainly the effort and the time that would go into it the second time around would be much easier, much different than, you know, what we experienced this time, because it was the first time any of us had done this, right? Even, you know, Diction Schwabel had a couple of other clients, you know, prior to us, but even, you know, they learned, right, from each experience, and they brought that learning to the table.
Tracy, there was a question in the chat from Rebecca. In making a donor ask, how many people is too many?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I always put thought into this, because if you have a gang of people, it doesn't feel comfortable. It feels like, you know, 4 against 1 kind of. And so that's where you really want to think about, if it's just one person, you probably don't want more than 2 people on the ask. If it's a couple, you know, maybe it's you, your executive director, and a program person, or a volunteer, you know, that can speak to their passion about the organization. If you're bringing someone onto your site, to your facility, to your location, then you can play around with that a lot easier. It's not just all these people sitting at a table. You can do a tour and plant people during the tour that will give exposure and engagement, you know, to your individuals that way. And then you've got, you know, the 1 or 2 people that you're sitting down in an office or conference room with. But yeah, don't have too many people. It'll feel uncomfortable for the donor. Good question.
Do you want to share with us your most successful ask?
Good question. I know for most folks, they're going to think the most successful is like your largest dollar amount, right? And I'm not so sure that's always the answer for me. The most successful one for me is when the donor is just feeling so good about their decision that they're making. That to me makes it all feel really good. Now, I will say, you know, most recently, one of my feel good major gift asks is with Gwen and Rick Stearns, who I meant their name because now their name is the Stearns Center for Low Vision is on our building, and it's not a secret that we named this after the Stearns. And in my mind, it was successful because of the fact that, yes, it was a major gift to the organization and what we're able to do with those funds. But again, how great the Stearns felt about their decision, and just how through the process of this, my relationship with them became so strong, and I have such admiration for them. So when I think of a success, it's that I think of, how good I feel about the donors and how good they feel about what they've given to. And the preparation, a lot of preparation went in, and it wasn't, now, in thinking about that, it wasn't as though we thought, oh, let's, I said, let's ask, in my mind, I'm going to ask the Stearns for, this major contribution. Let me pick up the phone and get an appointment, and we'll sit down and I'll make that ask. Wasn't like that at all. It was months of having a conversation about one thing, and it turned into something else, and then we were exploring another opportunity, and then was discussion with the financial advisor. As many steps to get there, but every step, trust me, every step I practiced and I prepared. Even if it was, I'm just calling to tell you about the conversation I had with your financial advisor. I thought about specifically what I was going to share about that conversation. Everything I thought about and prepared ahead of time. Okay, during COVID, donor tours and meetings have really changed. Any advice on ways to continue during this pandemic? Yeah. What a challenge that is, because those of us who are fortunate enough to have a facility where, you bring people in and you really hook them, and I'll tell you, working at the zoo, boy, that was so easy to get someone to come on site and have them engage with the giraffes or whatever it might be that day. But if you can't do that, what are you guys doing? I will tell you, I know a lot of folks are doing Zoom meetings. I have not been doing Zoom meetings. I've been doing phone calls, and I have had an occasional but rare in-person meeting. So yeah, have you made major gifts over Zoom? Has anyone made a major gift ask over Zoom? I have not. Over the phone I have. Anyone? No? Stephanie? How'd that go? Was it smooth? Was it awkward? Okay, pretty well. They pushed it off and first and called back and accepted. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're nervous and practice. Yeah, good. Oh, and you know what else is great is benefits of the whole, if you're doing it on the Zoom, is, put Post-it notes around your screen, right? I know a lot of us are probably doing that, but I found that's really helpful, those little reminders of things to say. So we're talking about, scripting. Well, right, like let's make sure that those points you want to make, if you're going to be on a Zoom call, that you're able to do that and still look into the camera and you got Post-it notes there. Certainly when I'm doing it on the phone, I've got my notes right in front of me while I do all of my calls with a headset. So then I've got my hands free, I'm making notes. Let's see, what, if anything, might you do differently after the fact if a donor approaches you with an unexpected gift for your organization? You mean you asked and it was, and they came back with more, a more major gift? Is that the question, Cindy? No, they were not asked. Oh, yeah. So sure, we've had it happen. We've had this great meeting, great cultivation call, and then they come back with the gift. You know what? Take it as a good thing, I guess. If you had planned to ask them for more, maybe later on, and they came in lower than what you had wanted, you'll have to figure out with that individual, is there opportunity to still get them to another level? And I've had those situations. I absolutely had those situations. And let me try to think. It may be that they came back with a one-time gift, and you want to gently, very gently, say, and how fabulous this is, and the need is so great, and maybe in the future, the months to come, you and I can have another conversation about supporting this in a multi-year way. It's, each case is going to be different. You got to very cautiously manage that type of a situation. So, and I absolutely had that happen. And I say, oh, darn, why didn't I make that ask earlier, right? All right, well, we're coming up to the 1 o'clock hour here. Thank you all again. This is to share and be educational with each other. Marlisa, actually, I guess I didn't realize that you have another name in AFP. What did you say? Ethical Ethel?
Yes, when I was the ethics chair, I was Ethical Ethel for my column in the newsletter. It was Emily's fault.
Okay, very cute. Well, anyways, thank you, Ethel. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, everyone. Feel free to contact myself, or I mentioned, Marlisa also. I'm sure she'll be happy to answer any questions too.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Tracy has agreed to share her PowerPoint presentation, so we can send that out to everyone. And if you have follow-up questions, please reach out to Tracy or to me. And if you're interested in volunteering with AFP, just reach out to us on our website. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Marlisa.
Thank you, Marlisa. Thank you, Tracy.